Welcome to Alligator Preserves, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue, and I have a fascinating new guest with me today. I would call him an up and coming young literary star. His name, and I know this is going to embarrass him because I met him a while ago, his name is Kollin Kennedy. Kollin, welcome to Alligator Preserves.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. So,
Mm.
if you remember how we met, what, a month and a half ago, a couple months ago? At the Rocky Mountain Fiction
Mhm.
Writers
Yes.
Colorado Gold Writers Conference. Tell me why a young man from Texas came all the way up to Denver to
Mhm.
go to a writing workshop, a writing conference.
Honestly, it was just trying to get out of my like push boundaries. What is the um get out of my comfort zone?
Yeah.
And I wasn't comfortable with just traveling, which is ironic because I've moved around a lot. I believe I also said I'm from originally from Louisiana. And just traveling to different states, I guess I just wanted to pull back and not be around, just new faces or try to get new information, all that. I just want to stay in Texas. I'm good with traveling. And that was my mindset. And this year, I just wanted to go contrary to that and just expand of like, okay, where are some places I want to go to just to um, be in a different state that has more of like a different political climate, or maybe there's people of like, maybe it'll be a little bit more diverse of the people that I meet, just something different. It was first I went to the Dallas or Texas Book Festival, or actually, I believe it was the Dallas Book Conference or something like that last year.
Mhm.
And then it graduated into um, just different workshops. And I went to the Chicago workshop and then went to Florida. And then while I was doing more research, that's when I came around finding uh, the Rocky Mountain um,
Fiction.
conference.
Yeah.
Yes. And once I found it, I was like, you know what? Just let me just apply for it and um, just make sure I get there as soon as it starts.
You
Mm.
did, and I think I probably met you the first night that I checked in. You were downstairs
Yes.
and we just started chatting and I thought, "Oh my goodness, this young man is doing something very different, I think, probably from your peers." Who are you, Kollin Kennedy?
I have no idea. No, yeah, it's just I wanted to just be different compared to a lot of I'll get say the poets I meet like in I went to college at University of North Texas, which is like about 30 minutes from where I am right now in the Dallas area. And we mostly feel that we have to be like just by ourselves, like within a room reading poetry, writing it, but not really getting out of our comfort zone and talking to other people and trying to make connections, like network, and try to learn from other people actually from speaking to them compared to just what we see like for free online or on Google or YouTube or something like that.
All right. So you are
Mhm.
you are a poet and a scholar. We're going to talk about your book, your collection as time goes by, a collection of poetry and prose, 93 poems and 9 letters.
Mhm.
Fascinating, unbelievable letters, which we'll talk about it in a minute.
Oh yeah.
Kollin, for people wanting to create their own collections,
Mhm.
how did you choose the pieces that you chose for this collection? And this is your first
Mhm.
book, yes?
This would be my first book that I'm very proud of because there is like a chapbook that I published, and that was more of like just trying to test the waters of
Okay.
learning how to publish. And then there was other books that were just I will even say like it was like good. It was
Experiment.
just like it spent a few months. I just spent a few bucks on that and just wanted to get it out, but it was just all learning at first.
So
So.
how did you pick what you chose for this?
Yes. So I would say Hmm. First, I would say like it would. I'll go through the process of like what poems I feel people would connect with. Even though I do write in a very traditional sort of style and concentrated style, I want to make sure with the like soul of the poem, it at least have some sort of feeling that I believe will connect with the reader. And I feel it's very important that I'm with my poetry that I'm developing a sort of relationship with the reader compared to just trying to write something and just blow it off and just like, oh, okay, let me just see like if they'll like it. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And again,
Mm,
selecting things for a collection, takes time. I know it does.
mm.
And I was amused by your intro where you basically give readers a heads up
Yes.
about your
Mm.
uncharacteristic style. So
Yes.
talk a little bit. I mean, you write sonnets. These are sonnets, right? We're
Mm.
talking
Yes.
an old form. Talk
Mm.
about your uncharacteristic style and maybe a little bit about why you wanted to warn people.
So I would say my style, I would say is mostly influenced by a lot of Shakespeare, English Renaissance literature from what is I can't remember his name, but John Milton, uh, John Donne. There's another poet that I can't think of right now that really influenced my poetry in the way I write it. Edmund Spencer. And just having those sort of styles, I don't see that sort of influence in a lot of poetry with like Instagram poetry to even modern poetry. I would say it's more of mid to late 20th century influences from Elizabeth Bishop to like T.S. Eliot sort of influences. And I wanted to warn the reader because or at least inform them of
Yeah.
like what I'm writing because whenever I was in school at UNT and even conversing with my other poetry friends and groups, because the style was so different, it would I've noticed it would make, and this may be my own looking into it, but it kind of seemed that I was making them a little bit uncomfortable with it. And I want, and my goal isn't to make someone uncomfortable with poetry. And I would notice this sort of reaction, and I would get like sort of criticism of like because I'm working in like an older sort of format. I was like, you know what, for this collection, I might as well just give a heads up. Like, if you want to read it, I'm glad that you're able to read it, but if you don't want to read it, that's completely fine. I hope maybe in the next collection you will enjoy it because I want at the end of the day to people to be entertained by the poetry
Yes.
and just as I said before, develop a sort of relationship. And I don't want people to just read it once and then just throw it away. I would much prefer someone to like just get maybe some five people read my poetry, but they stick with it for a long time compared to having like hundreds of people read it and then they just throw it away and forget about it. I hope that makes sense.
Well, let's go with you want thousands and thousands and thousands of people to read it, and then you don't care what they do with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I do think there is a lot of throwaway in our culture. I
Yeah.
feel there is, with social media, we could just like something and just scroll up and we could forget about it, or we'll eat something, consume it, we'll just throw it away, just throw away the plastic. And I just felt even with this collection, with my poetry in particular, there needs to be something that people could really focus on so their attention won't um divert or
Yeah.
just be so like scattered all over the place.
Yeah, I would say that you've brought the sonnet into the 21st century. Do you think
I
that's
hope
accurate?
so.
I
I
mean,
hope so. Yes.
you create new words, new punctuation. Do you have any favorite new words that you created? I you
I'm
use
good.
like
Mm,
passionments and
mhm,
humanal mirth and sufferment,
mhm,
and use an ampersand with a
mhm,
with an apostrophe ll for andal.
mhm, mhm,
It's surprising, and so
mhm.
it's refreshing. Yeah,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And honestly, I don't remember any, like, honestly, I can't remember any of the new words that I've created because how I write is just the idea comes so fast into my head. Like, I just have to get it out. Just when someone's writing like a story and they're so locked in,
yeah,
they just start writing and writing and writing, and they could forget maybe like 2/3 of what they wrote,
yeah.
but it's just the feeling that they had with it. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to remember any of the words I've
Yeah.
created or even remember any of the poems that I've created because I've written them so fast.
Oh, I get it.
Mm,
When you're in the flow, you just
mm,
go. You just go in the flow.
yes.
You tell me more about your earlier education and how you
Mhm.
came to love the sonnet.
I would say, hmm,
Or do you have any teachers who influenced you? And poetry. I mean, poetry.
mhm,
Typically, I taught language arts in the younger
mhm,
grades, and anytime I
mhm,
said we're ready for the poetry,
mhm,
session, there'd be groaning and moaning,
mhm.
and then of course,
Yeah.
I'd talk about music, and I'd have them do haiku, and some of my
Right.
male students wrote the
Mhm,
most incredible haiku. Uh,
mhm.
um, so yeah,
That's
poetry. Tell
awesome.
me about poetry and how you got into it.
So I would say there has been teachers that really influenced me. I would say particular the first teacher that came to mind is my AP English teacher. He really was a very, I wouldn't say a very serious because I feel that may sound bad, but he was very conscientious in having like each of his students. I know he didn't do this just to me, but each student succeed in writing the clearest, the greatest, the most like impactful writing they possibly can. And I remember sitting down with him. Um, I remember I was writing. It was he brought me in because he was confused as to why my essays didn't sound good, but like the stories that I would send for my project would sound like so much better, so much clearer. And he brought me in and was like, "What? I don't understand. Like, why can't you make this transition for the essay?" And hearing him like talk about like the difference between that and really saying you have something like special here really encouraged me to be even more motivated to just write in general. As for getting into the sonnet format, I it also came, I would say, I guess indirectly from the same teacher. He like even though I read a little bit of Shakespeare, the first play I read was the Comedy of Errors,
Mhm.
but he first introduced Macbeth to us,
Mhm.
and that really impacted me because of just the way he was teaching it and the way he was allowing us to decipher what Shakespeare was saying and some of the modern interpretations. I believe there was a Macbeth movie in the late 2000s that he showed us, and it was interesting seeing that and how watching it on screen is completely different compared to like just reading it, and you just
Yeah.
get a different sort of sense to it. And I think just from listening to him and reading Macbeth with him and with the class, I just fell into sonnets as well, or just reading Shakespearean sonnets.
Yeah.
And I just felt with the Shakespearean sonnets, there was so much more that I felt that Shakespeare could have done with his poetry that it was like, oh, what about this idea? What about this idea? And I just started experimenting with that and seeing what I could do with poetry as well.
That's incredible.
Yes.
Do you remember writing any poems when you were a child?
I do not. And it's interesting that you say that because I feel that I fell into writing. As a kid, I was more of my mom thought I was going to be more of an engineer because I was constantly like writing down ideas and building things just from just I'll see like a cardboard box or I see like a toothbrush and try to make something out of that. It would just be something so random that I was just trying to build things just for the fun of it. And as time progressed, I think just from moving and just like wanting to write, get stuff that was like on my mind onto paper, poetry just fell into the equation as I just, you know, um, developed in high school. Just,
That makes
yes.
that makes
Mm,
sense because there are feet, there are measurements in
yes.
poetry, and that makes
Mhm.
absolute sense. Did you ever have an Odyssey of the Mind or Destination Imagination in your elementary school? Are you familiar with those? Uh,
I don't think so.
okay, all right. There,
Mm,
it would have
mm,
been great for you as a kid building something.
mm,
They're challenges where
yes.
young kids have to get together and solve uh,
Mm,
a challenge and present it or whatever. But yeah,
yeah. Mm,
so you also,
mm,
and this is stunning as
mm.
a more mature person. You're tell how old are you?
I'm 23.
23. Your literary and pop illusions in here. I mean, you have so many. You've got Kate and Petruchio, you've got Tartuffe, you've got Lucy and Desi. I mean, how
Oh yeah.
how have you just read everything, seen everything? You're too young to have all that, uh, all those literary illusions in your head. How?
Honestly, I just love learning about different things. And I think just being super curious and that's come from like a young age as well is just I was just super curious and just asking so many questions about different things. I think it just about boils down to that. I wasn't really trying to be like, oh, let me have this certain illusion or this. It has to sound like all 50s or all 60s or 1950s, 1960s illusions, television or arts and stuff like that. It was just things that I was curious about and that I really love, especially like I Love Lucy. Even though I grew up with like like 90s and 2000s shows, I was just curious about, what's like why does everyone love Lucy? I want to love Lucy too, so let me just watch the shows. And I fell in love with the show. There was also different let's see. I can't remember the exact illusions that I've used, but like I believe you said Tartuffe.
Tartuffe, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that came from just I was just in the bookstore one day. I remember getting like Moliere's plays, and I was just or looking through the play section in a half price bookstore. I don't know if there's one in Denver.
There's got
But
to be.
I was just looking through and I just saw Moliere and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then I just started reading it, and one thing led to another. I fell in love with Moliere. So yeah.
I have a feeling you don't spend a lot of time playing video games.
I used to play a lot of video games, but then I fell out of playing video games because I think it was just I wanted to just move my energy into something useful and just putting more time into reading, putting more time into writing. Um, yeah, but I was obsessed with video games. I was very, very obsessed with video games, but then it just dwindled down like early high school when I moved to Dallas.
Okay. All right. Listeners, we are talking with Kollin Kennedy, who wrote this amazing collection of poems and prose letters. We'll get to that in a minute. Kollin, would you read a poem for me? Because when I got your
Mhm,
book,
mhm,
the first thing I did, and I do this sometimes with a poetry book, I'll just
mhm,
open it. I'll just open it to the first page that it opens to, and
mhm,
I opened it, and it fell onto the portrait of a nice guy,
mhm,
first perspective.
mhm.
Would you read that for our listeners?
Sure thing. Let's see. All right. The portrait of a nice guy. I do unto others as unto me. Relate respect, have class, make two or three. With love, I kiss the hand before the lips and make my measures no measure for hips. As I would to respect the lady's quest for this advancement. I treat all the best, but I'm the doormat to all open doors. When I'm this, most dust me off to the floors, making me flesh, while women reject the nice, taking me too virtuous for the vice of love. All in all, I'm a sweet nothing, without any to take me for something. And within me, there's a disgust for this, as the niceness brings me not any bliss.
Okay. Here's a very personal question. Is
Hmm.
this autobiographical? This particular poem?
I would say it's partially autobiographical. A lot of my poems, especially if I say like a first perspective or a study, I'm trying to put myself into someone else's shoes. With this poem, I would say is definitely partially, or I would say it's partially autobiographical because I've experienced with me very like I'll be very nice as with not just women but also friends, men, and whoever I would converse with, but I felt it wasn't reciprocated. I felt it was I was taken advantage of in some cases. And yeah, and I wanted to convey that sort of emotion in this poem.
You sure did, because
Mm.
like I said, I mean, I met you there. We talked for a while and I absolutely got that impression about me. I mean, you impressed me greatly, but
Mm. Thank you.
I'm not your peer. I'm way older. And were you born too late, too soon? Too late. You were born too late.
Mm. Hmm.
Do you ever wonder about that?
So are you thinking it's like I would be like an old soul?
Yeah.
Is that what you, that's a really interesting question. So yes and no.
Okay.
And honestly, I just don't I really don't think about it too much. Yes, in the sense that my interests are very different compared to my peers and what I focus on. But at the same time, no, because I really do appreciate the times that we do live in, regardless of like the ups and downs we go through, because of the amount of, I guess the word is decentralization of knowledge. I don't know the exact words, but there's so many um, avenues to be able to learn from. Like I could buy a book from Amazon or eBay, or I could go to the library and get some DVDs from the 1950s. I don't have to be stuck watching Netflix all day and watch whatever is like the new show that's on. And I really appreciate that. And I feel like if I was born, I guess like in the 50s or the 60s or the 90s, it will be a completely different sort of game I would have to play.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wouldn't say I was like born too late. Like I feel like I was born like just at the right time.
Well, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Couldn't ask
Thank you.
for any more than that. So
Mm,
again, your poem, I haven't read them all because you have, like I said, 93 in here, and I just got the book last week, so I have not read them
mm,
all, but
that's fine. That's
I'm
fine.
going to
Yeah.
work my way through them. But I did read all of
Mm,
your letters.
mm.
The letters are easier reads because they're kind of crazy.
Oh yeah.
Your
I'm glad
letter
you said.
number 5 to a
Mm.
friend requesting an introduction to a pop star Tito just made me laugh. So
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you.
Tell tell me about that letter. Well, tell me about the letters in general.
So the letters, honestly, the letters were not intended to be a part of the collection at
Okay.
first. But then because I was getting a lot of rejections from, magazines, I was like, you know what? Let me just put these letters just for fun, just to expose people of how weird my prose could be. And I've gotten the same reaction from my friends. And whenever I do read these some of my letters and open mics, they're just like, oh, some of the weirdest things that people have heard. And I really love that reaction. I really do. And I just wanted to take several emotions, and it's the same sort of background or motivations for poetry, where I would put myself in a perspective of someone else, put
Mhm.
myself in someone else's shoes. And I wanted to take several scenes, several emotions that I've seen me conversing with friends or people that I've met at meetups or at conferences. I would say mostly meetups, or I'll just like happen to meet someone at the museum or a coffee shop, and just put that in here. So letter five. This one, let's see.
The girl wanted an introduction to the pop star Tito.
Okay, so
And
yeah. Oh, this was inspired by, I felt there was a lot of people. Well, first it was inspired by my favorite comedian, Don Rickles. He put like a lot of like inspiration for this.
you
And just
are you
listening.
are Don Rickles. Don Rickles. Who in your
Oh,
generation knows who Don Rickles is?
probably if they know like Mr. Potato Head, if they but yeah, listening to his vinyl or his album Speaks, I just absolutely love that album so much. And I felt like, I believe Don Rickles was an only child, and I'm also an only child. And I felt like just listening to him, I could relate more of the soul of what he was trying to say, because all of it was just like he was trying to like have fun with everyone. And I don't remember the exact title of the, I guess, song or the sort of discussion, but it was one of them. And another, someone that I've met, they were very interested in like, celebrity culture, meeting other celebrities. And it seemed like there wasn't an eye in reality. And I felt like there was a little bit too much thinking that the celebrity would be this grandiose, this amazing figure, this sort of image that is like, oh, this like this amazing person, when really they're just a human like everyone else. Even though it really doesn't come like that on the page. I wanted to just make fun of that sort of belief that maybe we could idolize or be too I get too much into wanting like to meet someone famous or a celebrity, even though like we could meet even interesting people. Just like we met at a conference, and like I've met so many at the Rocky Mountain conference. There's a lot of interesting people who you could have conversations with,
Yeah.
compared to just listening to I
Famous
guess.
people.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's just, I think there's just like, there should be a little bit more perspective on just s- talking and communicating to the people around you more, compared to trying to optimize, like trying to talk to a celebrity or just someone famous, or someone who may be high in their like status, and I guess in a corporate or whatever the case may be. So
Well, I kind of
yeah.
want you to be famous someday so I can say I interviewed him when he was just a pup. You're just a pup. But again, your letters. So you write one about a mixtape. Your letter 15. There's much ado about money and greed and cleanliness or lack thereof, and in which Stank Foot is an issue in one of them, where you have a friend
Yeah,
visiting another friend in the
yeah,
hospital.
yeah,
And I mean, oh my gosh, I was
yes.
rolling. I was rolling. talk to me about that one. I mean, did that actually happen? Were you visiting a friend in a?
Yeah, so it's I really do appreciate that you had a great time with them. Like I really do love your reaction. And it's funny that you do mention those two because they're actually the ones that are very much inspired by what happened to me. Like the Stank Foot one was not only like I got that I was listening to a Frank Zappa song, and I love Frank Zappa, and listening to his song was really funny. And I was visiting like my best friend at the hospital, and I was like, we were moving him to a different room, and I got his shoes, I got his suitcase, and I was like, what is that smell? And I just started joking with him about that, and he started laughing. And I'm like, "Yo, bro, you can't do this. I can't do this right now. Like, I already drove all this time to come over here. Like, you can't do this to me." So we have that sort of like crazy sort of humor. So he knew I was joking,
Kind of.
and I translated this into the book, and I was just I just wanted to do something that was a little bit funny. It was just inspired by that. And then the what is it, the money one, I believe you're
Yeah.
referencing the letter
Agreed.
about, right. It was actually two experiences. So one was actually I was hanging out with a friend in Barnes and Noble, and we were talking about Spider-Man, and someone from like a college close, not UNT, but in the Dallas Fort Worth area, approached us about a business deal, and literally he started talking about how he had ambitions of trying to what is it, retire at 23.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
told us about his great extensive dating life, and he started just talking about all these business opportunities. And after he left, my friend and I were like, that's interesting. So and then another experience where and I feel like maybe you could feel the frustration maybe in the
Oh yeah.
latter half.
Oh yes.
So that's where I started really trying to harness this second experience where I met someone who was really who was very interested in having me on their team for a uh, certain business, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And it felt like whenever I told him I didn't want to be a part of the team, I did feel there was a bit of, in my looking into it, a bit of disrespect in how I like want to, pursue writing instead of just mainly business and just focus thereof. And I was listening to him, and we got off the phone. I was like, I think I really need to write this, just get this all out. And I put that in this letter.
And the
Mm,
idea of, how much is enough?
mm,
How much more do you need?
exactly. Exactly. And we had sort of meetings too at Starbucks or other coffee shops about, you know, trying to make more money. But it's just like we could have all the money in the world, but it's just what's the point if you're not like, if you're not in a relationship, or you don't have good friends around you, or if you're not healthy. I mean, that's being
Yeah.
healthy is like very, very important.
Amen. Yeah.
Mhm.
Who do you hope will read your work?
Everyone. So like honestly, I would say, yeah, I would say that really is the best answer. Really university students, adults living every in the United States. I would say one person who like who just goes about life, not anyone who's really big into pop culture, or like they just in a routine. They wake up, drink their coffee, go to work, then come home, eat dinner, then go to bed, and it's just like the same thing over and over. I
You,
feel like I oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say you want thoughtful people.
I'll say I just want like just a regular person who feels they're not really getting much out of, I'll say, pop culture or even in the arts nowadays, because I feel there isn't really too much happening in the arts. There may be some stuff like in pop culture that is okay, but I just want someone who feels that they're such like in a sketch or in a like it's such a routine where they just want to break out of that just for a little bit so they won't have to engage with a lot of what's going on nowadays.
Yeah, because poetry isn't necessarily easy to read, right?
Right. Mhm.
And some of these that I read, I know I have to read them more than once.
Oh yeah. And that's what I love. I just love that someone is actually taking the time to read the poetry more than once. And even if they don't have like a good opinion about it, I really do enjoy that someone at least has an opinion about it, because I've heard people say like, oh, it's a bit odd, or it's like, oh, it's like I've never heard this before, but I still like that because it means that I'm doing something, or at least trying to do something that's unique, and they're at least engaging with it and could actually form an opinion about it. So I really do appreciate that.
You're making an
Mm.
impression with your words. You definitely are. So
Thank you.
what are you working on now?
Right now, I'm working on another poetry collection. This is probably just going to be mostly all sonnets, or it's going to be all sonnets. I may also put in some longer forms of poetry, not just sonnets, but I would have like prose poems, as well as I like calling them poetry portraits. I really don't
Okay.
know exactly how to describe it, but if you've read like Virgil's earlier works, he would have like discussions between like the characters of like, I guess, like farming. I really can't remember the name right now, but it was mostly in that sort of vein. Not really just in like about farming or agriculture, but it's inspired by those works, and also poetry inspired by paintings, and having the characters in those paintings talk to each other, and like,
Yeah.
and I give them like blank verse or rhyming verse or stuff like that.
I love that. I love that. I
And
don't I don't
mm,
imagine you're going to have any limericks in there, but would you consider a haiku or two?
I would consider it. I do have haikus in the vault by just about really, I always felt like my haikus weren't really good or great. But maybe I'll just have to give that a shot, because a lot of them are inspired by um just if I see like plants, I'll just write a small haiku about that, or just something interesting about life that I really like, and just write a haiku about that. So I do have stuff, haikus in the vault. So
A flash of a feeling or whatever. 17 syllables,
yes.
and they have to be 17 really good syllables.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And also I'm working on a literary fiction right now.
okay. That doesn't
And
surprise me.
and I would say if you thought this prose was weird, this is gonna be like times 10 really weird. And
Okay.
I'm really glad that I was able to create it's gonna be satire and sort of this sort of light. And if you can imagine the Nutty Professor
Mhm.
with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So it's gonna be that sort of combination.
Your letters are satirical as well. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you have a knack for that. I think it comes naturally.
Thank you.
I don't know where you get that, but you got it. Colin,
Thank you.
where would you like people to find you and your work?
So people could find me on my website, collinkennedy.com,
Okay.
as well as my Instagram. Kollin K1, Kollin K1. I do have a Twitter, but I'm not on it. I'm honestly not on it too much. I don't want people to be exposed like to the little inklings of thoughts that may come to rush through my mind and stuff. But but I'm mainly active on Instagram, and also my work can be found on my website. And also, I'm starting a podcast.
You
That's
are.
gonna be, yes.
Okay.
I have it entitled Apollo's Muse on
Okay.
Spotify,
All right.
and it's just me doing poetry readings, and I'm reading poetry that I haven't released yet. I read a poem that was from this book, and it's going to be just a mix of that as well as commentary of my motivations for the poem, as well as how I went about writing it, and just some other observations about the poem. And I think, uh, I guess, the perspective of life I wanted to put into it.
Okay. Did you design the cover?
I did not. I wish.
Okay.
Yeah, I paid someone on Fiverr to be able to create this cover, and I really appreciate her. Like, she was amazing. Like, everything that I asked for, she was able to get it just like that. So
All right. Well,
yeah.
if you would send me some links, I will have links and photos on my website at leadvillelaurel.com, and where you can find your work, Kollin, and your cover designer, in case anyone wants to know about that. Do you have
Oh yeah.
any other shout outs or any other advice you would like to give to younger writers or even older writers? Give me some advice.
Shout outs. I can't think of shout out. I like to shout
Your
out my
teacher.
man,
Your
my
teacher.
teacher
Yeah.
back in
Yeah.
the day in high
Your
school.
AP English teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Wirtz. I love him. My friend Ethan. I would say advice. I feel like I'm still learning. I'm still growing as a writer. I feel with my poetry, I really don't know who came up with the quote, but it's like poetry is never finished, only abandoned.
Oh,
And I really do love that quote. I feel like I have a feeling that Patti Smith said that, but I think she was quoting someone else, and it was like a quote derived from like Leonardo da Vinci or something.
yeah.
But I always stuck with that quote because it seems it's always you're always growing. You're never finished like writing. So even though I've wrote this and I published this collection,
Yeah.
there's still more ideas to be written down. There's more um, books to be flipped and prose to be written or read, and just things of nature to be engaged in. And I feel that I'm still like a student, just learning. And I would really love for people to, it sounds very cliche, but to be their own person and go with their gut with a lot of what they write, because I really don't feel there are many people who are going with their gut at whenever read a lot of Instagram poetry. It seems that they're just wanting to follow the crowd and want to write something so people could like them.
Mm.
My poetry isn't for everyone, and I know that going in. So I would much rather have a few people love me and a few people dislike me compared to just have everyone like me. Because I feel like only if everyone liked me, then it would be very quick for people to dislike me, or they'll just like ignore it, ignore the poetry. But if I have those few people love me for what I do and what I stand for, then those people they may not get me, they may disagree with me, they may even dislike me for like a short bit of time, but they will still really engage with what I have to say in the poem and really feel a sense of soul within the verse. And I would love for people to just stick with their guns and really like just engage with a lot of literature they may not read in on a daily basis. Like read like classical literature, read Renaissance literature, as well as like modernist literature from the 20th century, and combining that to make your own individual person. Mm.
Absolutely fabulous advice. I don't think I could say it better. I too, at my age, I'm
Thank you.
still learning. I don't
Mm.
know that you could ever put a final. I don't know that you could ever really say the end and know that it's the end, because you
Mhm.
always know there's more you could do,
Oh yeah,
edit, revise, whatever. But at some point,
right,
like the artist with the paintbrush, at some point you have to put the last stroke on, and you have to put that last period on there, and
right.
and send it out there. And what you have done by sending this out into the world as time goes by, a collection of poetry and prose, you have launched this piece of art into the world.
Mhm.
It's no longer yours, Kollin. I don't know if anyone ever told you that, but it's not yours
Mhm.
anymore. This now
Mhm.
belongs
Yeah.
to me, because I'm
Yes.
reading it and I'm going to interpret it as I want to, and everybody else will as well. So it's very brave what you've done. I admire you
Thank you.
greatly, and I'm serious. You are an up and coming literary star, and I am going to follow you. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you
I
are
really do.
so
And
yeah.
I feel there. Oh, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say you're so welcome. And go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, I feel there's a lot of people who are very could be very nervous about publishing collections of poetry,
Yeah.
especially whenever I go back to Denton, like that's where University of North Texas is. Um, it would I feel I get the same response in like my writing groups and poetry groups, that is like very daunting to have like your thoughts like out into the world. And I think just getting over that hurdle is like already the bet like half of the battle. So as long as everyone can keep um their mentals like really focused on the goal of writing poetry and publishing it into the world, I think they'll be able to do like a really good job going forward.
And as you nailed it,
Mhm.
getting out of your comfort zone in both your
Oh,
writing and your reading. Kollin
mhm.
Kennedy, thank you for being on Alligator Preserves, and I wish you the best of luck. And
Thank you.
I hope to see you at the next conference somewhere. All right.
Yes.
All
Thank you.
right. You take care, and listeners out there, check out the show notes with links and photos on Leadville Laurel, and buy Kollin's book and immerse yourself in it and put yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye, Kollin.
Bye bye.